Hey everyone, welcome to Designing Up, where design leaders share stories about leadership, growth, and the shaping of future of design. Hi everyone, welcome to Designing Up. So today I'm super excited to have Avi with me. Avi currently a senior director of product design at Deel. Before that, he was also leading design at Shopify. Avi has a ton of experience. I'm super happy to dive deep and talk about design with him. If you weren't a design leader right now, what would you think you'd be instead?
I always wanted to be a musician in my past. I think that I wanted to maintain everything in my life in the creative realm. So, writing poems, making music, playing instruments, drawing, doing photography, doing some 3D, and then into design. I think I discovered design through my back then girlfriend and also through the necessity of promoting oneself as a
Hmm.
music artist.
Oh, nice. So you're really in the creative field.
100%.
That's great. That's very important, right? Being a designer.
Yeah, I believe, they say that the best athletes are the ones that have done multiple sports, right? If you, for example, just do weightlifting all your life, then the chances of you having injury are much higher because all the supporting muscles are not working in order to facilitate for that. And if you have tried multiple things, A, you have better chance of finding the thing that you're really good at. And B, you've developed all sorts of other muscles and your body is used to work in other ways. So there's no specific tension on one movement. And at the end, I think it's statistically proven that like the best athletes are ones that have tried multiple sports, not just stuck
Yeah.
to just one.
Yeah, I love your take. And yeah, and also, how do you get into then design? What's your journey looks like from beginning?
I think it started, as I mentioned, from music, doing album covers. I was working with a pretty crappy record label, but they gave me the shot to learn how to print things and learn to communicate with artists, etc. I think pretty fast in my journey, I discovered that even though I can do brand and visual design, I'm more attracted to user
Mm.
experience and product design, and it felt less prone to subjectiveness and more objective. More ways to explain what is right. There are more metrics so you can see if you are correct or incorrect. There's way less sense to just like gut feeling. I think that over time that has changed. So now I am shifting back a little bit towards gut and taste and things along those lines, but that's probably because of AI and what that allows you to accomplish. I'm sure we'll get into that at some point.
Yeah, it's like ironic, right? Like you go full circle. You started, and then that's a great thing about design. And I was having a conversation with a friend of mine. We were talking about the same thing. Right now, we're going back to the basics again to reinvent ourselves. Especially talking about because you have a ton of leadership experience, Ari. How did you get into the leadership, like management, from the C roles?
I think my first leadership experience was at Samsung. I came from a variety of other places, but at Samsung specifically, it was this perfect combination of hardware and software. And we were working in an innovation lab, trying to make things that the world doesn't know that exist right now. If you think about, for example, liquid glass, it was impossible per se to do that really in Figma or to do at least animations, etc. Maybe you can play with some gradients and maybe get to it to the point that Figma had to produce a plugin that manufactured that right
Mm.
after they did that. And that is the magic in working in operating systems. You are essentially designing ahead of any tool, possibly. And so that's when I first started my leadership experience. I was leading the VD department, which stands for visual display. That's everything in Samsung that deals with televisions, audio
Mm.
systems, and a little bit IoT devices. I think televisions was the primary thing that we were working on. That's a product that Samsung is leading at, and so back then was selling like 16 million televisions a year just in the United States. So it was pretty big, and they had the operating system called Tizen, which was Samsung's operating system. I think like historically they were always aware that Google can, for example, cut ties, cut Android And we've seen that when China and the US started battling a few years ago, they basically pulled Android out of the capabilities of doing with Xiaomi and Huawei. And then they were like, oh no, we need to make our own operating system. Samsung had that thing in mind because they were market leaders in the United States as well. They had that in mind continuously. They were very paranoid about it. And especially in televisions, it allowed us, unlike the mobile team at Samsung, to just go and completely reinvent. We had like control all the way to the core, to the chip that runs the televisions and the hardware. And so I was running their team that was constructed out of industrial engineers, designers, interaction designers, UX designers, and strategists that try to figure out where is that gap, what is necessary, what is needed in the market at that particular junction. And it's really important in a hardware company because you release the product once a year. And if you made a mistake, like for example, if your phone explodes, like what happened back then with the Note 9, I think, then the whole year is screwed. And so there's a lot of thought and craft that is led to that exact moment where you do the launch, because it's either success or it's like a massive failure. There's nothing in between.
That's super interesting when you said you release once a year, and especially because it's a very anticipated product, right, for the market with a huge market cap. What's the culture looks like for design, especially because it's a lot of functions aligned, right, to get this release? Like, how was like design, the role that design played?
Design was really important. I think you can see that also now. I forgot his name. They took the CDO, the ex-Pepsi CDO, Mauricio, I think his name is. It has always been fundamentally important, but there was always obviously challenges. Samsung produces so many of those products and into so many markets. So I can give you an example. In the past, we were working like on a remote control, and some countries mandate some specific functions, some specific buttons that have to be there. And so designing that and like figuring out how you simplify it and still maintain those options. For example, in France, they need to have you have these colorful buttons, the red, the blue, green, and red and yellow buttons have some functions in French television. We had to incorporate it into a button and then create the symbol in a very specific way to facilitate for that while simplifying the interface. So you like work around regulations. You work around patenting. There's a lot of offensive patenting. So we do this, so Apple would not do this. And if Apple do this, they pay us money, or Google. And there's a lot of defensive ones. We had this idea. We don't plan to do it, but we don't want anyone else to do it. So we're going to make that patent. I do that a lot in the market generally in these types of companies, especially in hardware, because a patent can really screw you over. With software, it's a little bit harder to make patents. Still possible, still being done. And again, I think software is usually more defensive. I don't think OpenAI can start like suing people or get sued for the fact that they did a chatbot, even though gazillions of other companies did chatbots in the past. The way it worked at Samsung, we had different teams across different offices. And the idea was every office is expert in their own market. So we were in the European office. We had the teams in Italy, France, and the UK. There was a China office, there was an India office, an American office, and each one of those, essentially, we often got like the same brief. There's actually like a really good book called Samsung Rising that tells the story more or less of the years that I've been to Samsung. So I think it's a really good read, and I really enjoyed like reflecting after that book came out. But we usually basically got like a brief. Let's say we are working on a wireless speaker like Sonos, and we want to bring that into market. And then each team gets between 2 to 3 months to make a prototype of that. And we all go down to Seoul and go essentially into a reality show where we battle and show across the ranks those products. And whoever gets into market is the team that won. And so success at Samsung is constructed out of like how many pitches you won. And when that thing went into market, how many successes were with those pitches at the end.
That's amazing. Yeah. That's really great to actually hear like stories like that, especially from your experience, right? From us outside looking in, we don't see that. I'm also very curious to understand leadership experience at Shopify, because they also really invested heavy in design, right? Like also they have a chief design officer now. So it's trending the direction of investing a lot into design. But how's your experience there also as a design leader?
Yeah, I think Shopify is an amazing company, top-notch talent, incredible directors. I would say like the percentage of folks that are not good is very low. The CEO is completely committed to design. I think every time also when I look at it more as an advice to anyone who is looking for a job, look at what the founder has done and understand how important your discipline is going to be today. It's not just in design. And Toby is an amazing CEO. He's a visionary CEO. He's also the founder. He has a lot of control. He has a lot of options, and he can maneuver the board and the company to do what needs to be done based on what he believes the future is. But if you look back, then essentially he was a front end, back end, full stack developer. And as a developer, as he was trying to ship those changes, he really understood how important design is because it wasn't one of his strong suits. And he needed a designer to work with him on that. So he's really passionate about. He has recorded multiple podcasts and spoke about design quite greatly. And through AI, he's investing a huge amount in that inside Shopify and essentially powering and letting designers have even more control over the final output and the envisioning and researching over everything that comes out. So I think he's a great leader. At Shopify, I have worked across the team that is called markets, everything that relates to internationalization. So as a merchant, you scale locally. How do you make it that you go and expand globally? Because when done right, the amount of work that you need to do is not a huge amount of work to sell internationally. However, it can be a huge amount. So if you think of what happens when you sell locally, you need to do shipping, you need to do ads, some advertising, and then manage your finances, etc. When you go internationally, now you have like other aspects. You need to have taxes across multiple countries and different languages, domains. You have warehouse fulfillment. You have currency exchange. When do you exchange? When do you take the money to make sure that you get the best out of it? You have different shipping providers, UPS, DPD, whatever, all those companies. And you have also like different behaviors, and you need to run support across all those things in all those multiple languages. And returns are much harder, more expensive. Every mistake is more expensive from your perspective. And there's also like you need to manage and arrange your storefront differently. So if in Argentina it is summer, in the UK it's winter, and vice versa. So you can't show coats in Argentina when it's summer. So you need to show shorts in Argentina while you show coats in the UK. They have different best sellers because the trends are different. Like in Japan, what you're going to sell is going to be completely different potentially from the stuff that you're going to sell in the United States, as an example. So I was working across all of these. And then near the end, I was working on two products. One is called Collective, which allows connecting merchants with other merchants. So essentially creating this drop shipping, but with trusted other Shopify merchants. In example, when you create a marketplace, let's say you're selling baby stuff. One of the biggest clients there was Bye Bye Baby. And so they have prams come from one place, diapers come from a different place, toys, shirts, feeding products, etc. There's no one manufacturer that makes all those things in reality. If you can look at every store on the street, the majority of those stores like just import stuff from multiple other things. And so Collective was there to automate all that stuff and make sure that, okay, the diapers company came up with a new type of diaper. Now it's automatically syncing to my storefront, display the way it needs to be displayed with all the agreements and the percentages of who gets what when a transaction happens. How do you deal with combined checkouts where one product is from one supplier, another is from another, etc. And then another product called Collabs, which was about connecting merchants with content creators / influencers. And then in the end, I was also working on how that works quite nicely, the Shop app.
Awesome. Especially a company like Shopify, since you mentioned all the details. How do you actually look for talent? I'm pretty sure you hired people there, right? What's the standard there and what do you look for? I would love to know like a little bit more on that.
I think that is not super different to also like the way we are looking at it right now at Deel. Generally, I would say we have looked for talent in both places, Deel and Shopify. We look for talent internationally. I think Shopify is slowly narrowing down their international intentions, but Deel is very much all across the world. If you're a great designer, wherever you are, just come, we'll make it work. The things that we're looking for, and granted, these companies are remote companies, fully remote companies, not hybrid. So with that in mind, you need people who are autonomous. You need people who are great communicators. I would say these are like the top two skills, right? Because you might send someone a Slack message trying to understand something specifically about your project, and it might take them an hour or two or three to reply to you. In the meantime, you can't just stop and wait.
Yeah.
You need to keep on progressing with your product based on your assumption. And over time, as your context gets better, your assumptions will be more correct. So essentially, you'll be right more often, which is something that at Shopify we talked a lot about.
Yeah.
The communication aspect is, if you really think about it, the whole team is relying on you, especially as a designer, right? Usually you work one designer on a group of between 10 to 15 developers. So that's a lot of design work and a lot of questions from a lot of developers. And so communicating well helps prevent some of those questions. Having a super tidy Figma file helps prevent a lot of those questions. And on the opposite side of it, if you haven't shared an update today and told us what you've done and shared the kind of new changes in the prototype, no one has any idea what you've done today. Add that to a couple of other days, the trust decreases because, okay, what the hell is this person doing? And when trust starts disappearing, that's when real problems start appearing.
Those are like great points, regardless of your level, especially like the companies like fully remote you mentioned. So anybody listening, I think those two are really great skills to start with. And I want to actually talk a little bit about Deel also. I would love to know, and then I'll jump into the other subject. But can you tell me a little bit about Deel? Because you are now a senior director of product design. I'd love to know how you operate and what's your challenges there.
So let's first introduce Deel, right? Deel is, from my perspective, the best partner that you can get as a company to work with for your operating system. Everything that relates to what you have at work is solved by Deel. That is from hiring people, posting those positions, sorting through people, finding the right people, to sorting out their contract, giving them the equipment that they need with the permissions that they need, being able to facilitate for all the different types of workers. So you would timely worker. So that would be like, imagine like a Pizza Hut, people who run shifts, needs to book shifts. And obviously that is from the side of the employee, but also from the side of the employer as well. So someone just cancel a shift, like what do I do? How do I triangulate that? How do I find the next person, et cetera, et cetera. Talking about contractors as well and full-time employees. And that is across 160 plus countries. So you can imagine every country, very similar to the example that I had with Shopify and Market. Every market and every kind of place have different rules about vacations and sick days and bereavements, et cetera, et cetera. And then to the point of like actually managing this talent, reviewing them, making sure that they have the right benefits, making sure that they have the right courses to do. And up until, including, let's say, immigration, if you need to move someone from a place or get a visa for someone. And that is all the way up to organizational change. So if you want to make an organizational change, let's say you want to save money, X amount of money per month, or you want to grow and you want to understand which countries you want to grow through or to, we help you project what it looks like. We show you that on your org chart. If you need to do layoffs, unfortunately, or if you need to grow, and we help you model that and follow through with that with all the tools. So it's like anything that you can imagine, really, in workplace, both on the worker side and the client side, across from like a 2 people business all the way to like huge enterprises. So that's Deel. Specifically, my role inside Deel, at the moment, we are 2 senior directors at Deel, and we are 85 designers. So we basically split the teams of about 40-something designers for each one of us, and we work across multiple verticals. I specifically work on everything that is related to finance, everything that is related to AI and the app ecosystem. So all the apps that plug into Deel and work with us, because Deel is essentially like Lego. You don't have to buy the whole suite and just get like the piece. If you need the HR piece, you can get the HR piece. If you need the payroll piece, you can do the payroll thing. You can just like plug and play whichever thing you want, which is one of the main drivers for us to grow and be able to meet more customers where they need us to meet them and be like an effective partner to them.
Thanks for the introduction. Really good to actually understand a little bit more how you operate there. It feels like also design is super vital, right? How you mention it. Feels like it's very close with the direction where it's going, very attached. How is the culture was created there? I would love to know. Was it like from beginning, it was the same way like the leadership, like in the Shopify, or was it a different shift?
I think one of the things that are charming at Deel is the 2 founders, Alex and Joe, are still working at Deel, still driving it, extremely passionate about where we're heading. And the company is growing extremely fast. It's 7,000 people in 6 years. You can imagine that not the whole,
Yeah.
it's not like 1,000 per year. The majority of them came in the last 3 years. It creates some challenges where like lots of people are new, but also there's a lot of excitement and there's a lot of really interesting, powerful growth gearing out, hopefully, towards going public at some point. My other kind of work husband, counter director, Muhammad, is amazing. He was there from almost day one. He created the design team from scratch, essentially. And he came with a mission to make the best design team that is global in the world. And really, I'm relatively new, so I'm 2 months into the role. And he did an incredible job at growing that team from literally him to 80, 85 people. It's incredible what he did there. And he worked very closely with the CEO, and the mandate and the understanding of like how important design is very evident inside Deel.
That's amazing. I would like to maybe go into a different topic from the past experience and present experience. I'd like to move a little bit to understand the design philosophy. Like when you're looking at it right now, like you mentioned also earlier, like a lot of things are changing. How do you think right now the state of design? Because there's a lot of layoffs happening. People are not getting hired too much, but there are people getting hired are very senior and ICs. What do you think of what's happening in the state of design?
I think there's a look at the end. I've been enough time to see that there's like a trend. I remember in the past when when Flash was there, everyone's gonna code, we're all gonna do action script, etc., etc. Then there was another kind of like Web 5, whatever. At
Yeah.
the end, I think there are moments in the design industry where it pays off to be a generalist and it pays off to be extremely technical. Personally, as an IC, I was an interaction designer. I was always like deep in code, etc. It does play to my strengths, but I know a lot of people didn't come to design from that discipline. A lot of people came from ergonomics, from psychology, from human-computer interaction, from content design, etc., etc. Now, as AI is working towards simplifying and making it easier to do some things that are repetitive or that took some people a lot of time. You can see that a lot, for example, in marketing. Lots of teams in marketing design just don't hire like a camera crew and actors, etc., etc. They just like work for 2 weeks with VO3 and they come up with a decent ad.
Yeah.
Now, not every company is going to do that, and not every company is going to do that for every campaign they would want to do that. But I think we are seeing more and more of that, and that trend will continue. In the world of product design, if you think of the things that can be replaced, I think in some capacity, copy, once you have the right terminology and the right training, you would need less content designers. Once you have like at Shopify, we moved from having a researcher per team to, I think at this point of time, if I'm not mistaken, they have seven researchers. That basically is a researcher for every 30 designers. Because at Shopify, at least when I left, there were 230 designers. What those folks are doing are working with the likes of NotebookLM and variety of AI tools to create synthetic personas based on all the data that we have. And you can ask the synthetic persona as if it was a real user. And you make a persona for like an enterprise client, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, there's a limitation there because the synthetic persona is derived from things that were in the past and some sort of logic of what may come in the future. But because companies like Shopify and Deel as well have a lot of data, if they are doing the right things with the data, like triangulating all the feedback that comes from everywhere, all the sales calls, etc., if they triangulate all that stuff into AI and feed that into that kind of like synthetic user personas, you can get like a real pulse of the market without the necessity of really going to talk to the clients. Or you have a faster way to just test the water. And then when you have something more serious or when you have decided that you want to invest a little bit more money, that's when you go and research deeper. So you just need less people for that specific function. And those people, unfortunately, at this point of time, need to be more technical on their craft. Like content designers at Shopify were expected to train models that help designers write copy in the tone of voice of that specific product that they're working on. and researchers are there to like help make synthetic personas. So it's all about feeding the AI and helping the AI do the better job on that behalf. And everything that is essentially repetitive, you make a table in Figma and you just want to populate it with real content, boom, like one click with a Figma plugin. Like a design system now, you need to make like plugins that
Mm.
populate content, images, text, depending on all the use cases that you
Mm.
have. And that's a thing that is expected from design system. Creating MCP for Cursor, V0, or whoever to be able to translate the design system. Now the code side of the design system is like as critical as the design side. Whereas before you could have shared it between designers and developers. Now like the designers in the design system needs to be more technical. So you can see all those worlds where you could be more arty crafty. The necessity of the technical expertise there is growing. And I think that that thing will continue into all facets of product design as well. And you can see Shopify does a lot of that. Designers are essentially like making prototypes and letting you just play with the parameters of like how the animation is working. How do you show it in like different use cases, for example? Deel, we have so many personas. And so like when we design, we would throw it into AI and have the ability to just go and, okay, what does the homepage look like for this persona,
Mm.
that persona, for that, without needing to go in and log in, etc., etc. Now you have a
Yeah.
prototype that you can look at it from different points of view.
Yeah. Oh man, there's so many information there. And actually, you read my mind. I was about to ask you about UX researchers and UX writers, content designers. You already responded it. Because exactly, I feel the same. There's so much changes happening. And with all these things you mentioned really well, what I'd like to know though, from your point of view, what is the expectation of designer? Because you mentioned a lot of new things, right? Now you have to do more generalist stuff. That means like you probably need to do maybe more, right? Out of the role in a way. How do you create like this right expectation or the guardrails or to do experimentation, but yet also to bring the right impact?
I think design was always about making the most realistic thing with your hands to test it and sell it. Test it with users, sell it internally, sell it externally. And so the more high fidelity you got into, the
Mm-hmm.
better it became. And I think we have long time ago, we already have passed the world where you had UX designers and UI designers, and it was like a factory. This guy does the wireframe, the other guy does the UI, etc. We're long past that. A,
Yeah.
because we have better tools, and B, because people have learned both of those. And of course, some people will be better at like prototyping, etc.,
Mm-hmm.
etc., and some people will be less good. However, right now you have the ability to do it in such fidelity that is close to code. Fidelity that people can just copy some pieces of that code and implement it, or just you can just like ship that yourself if you have the security measures, because the problem is with those things at this point of time, that code is not secure. It's like loading stuff from all sorts of libraries that you don't want, etc., etc. So you have the ability to take it to the next level and make the thing more real, and that is the expectation. And so, and also that's also the thing that people are more excited about and feels more real, and other people can also do.
Yeah.
And so, as a designer, I think your duty is always to stay at the forefront of technology and try to make what you're making as real as possible.
Yeah.
Because it's like magic, it's like voodoo. When people looked at designs in the past, it was like, whoa, can you
Yeah.
do that? That's amazing. And before, you just spoke to someone and you designed something and they saw their ideas in your Figma file or whatever. Now those people can go and talk to you and you can make it real with good taste and deep
Mm-hmm.
opinion, or they can just go and talk themselves and get
Mm-hmm.
to, I don't know, 60% of what you're going to produce or 50% from what you're going to produce. And so now those static mockups are just not enough because they can get very close themselves. So you really need to be better at
Mm-hmm.
making it real, and
Yeah.
you need to be better at them in making it real. And that's the new skill that a lot of people need to adopt.
Yeah.
It's just not enough the fidelity that people worked in the past. And generally, I don't believe, I know some people do that. I sometimes see that in case studies and interviews. Like people are like, hey, I draw this thing on a note, on a paper. And I'm like, cool, if that's comfortable for you to way to think, awesome. But I go straight to high fidelity. I don't believe in going through wireframes, etc., etc. Maybe like for 2 seconds when I just start thinking about it. But with design system, the ability to go and AI, the ability to go that fast to something close to real.
Well said. A lot of people are trying a lot of things, and there is no linear of way of doing things, but the outcome is what, like you said, important, right? To get there, they're trying everything. I believe because they push you experimentation and thinking outside the box, right? It's challenging a little bit status quo. So that's good. But I would like to also know, do you already have especially like a workflow, a process put down, or is it fully experimentation still? Because there's so many new things coming up every day.
I think it's a tool, and we're running and operating on multiple tools. And some of those tools are like a cursor will be good at one thing versus Lovable versus Builder.io versus Figma Make, etc., etc. I think it's too early to have a process. At the moment, I treat it as we have a new tool in the toolbox. We're utilizing it. Sometimes we're using it wrong. Sometimes by practicing, you understand that you try to hammer something that is not a nail. But yeah, I think everyone is still exploring. I don't think anyone has nailed it. But the idea I think one of the key things that would help any team with this thing is tool stitching. Some companies have IT teams that limit, oh, you can use this, you cannot use that, just use Gemini, just use whatever, etc., etc. This is too early to do this because none of those tools is good enough to be used in isolation. In order to make a video, you need to go through the script making, the storyboard making, whatever, Midjourney because it has the best visual capacity, Runway if you have something that you recorded and you want to replace, Creo with all the models and VO3. So you need to go through so many things in order to get to the results that you need to get. It's the same in product design as well. So I think whoever is trying to limit that and prevent designers from actually going and trying out all the tools in order to get to the result is essentially preventing the creativity because a drawing cannot be only drawn with one brush. Like the brushes are just not good enough to be drawn with in isolation. You need to do all the whole stack, unfortunately, until some of those, you'll start having like consolidation. Some of those companies would have a rich enough set of features. None of them has it at this point of time.
Awesome. I would like to follow up one more question actually, because I was curious how you look at it. Because you mentioned how a design process, how you create the expectation, right? The designers and how designers supposed to work. I'm actually very curious. You said it, right? You used to do kind of linear way. A lot of people do it, right? You start with a lo-fi, hi-fi, you do all this motion, right? Going through the motion. How do you assess like portfolio, especially at this age? There's so many things changing, and because I'm pretty sure you used to look at it 2 years ago very differently, right? Or maybe I'm wrong. What's your take on that?
Look, I can't wait for the moment that someone's going to send a portfolio that is completely made by AI of projects that they never did, but it's going to look like they did it. And it's going to look so good that I would believe that someone actually did that. I'm sure the internet would go kaboom once we find that person. Maybe there are already people. I haven't seen that yet, but maybe there are. So if you are, please send me your portfolio, your fake portfolio. I would love to see that because I'm going to give you a job just because of that. So that's one. Two, I think generally the way I treat portfolio is like an action film. What do I mean by that? In an action film, it's 2 hours, but in the first 3 minutes, you're going to have an explosion. Someone's going to die, a car is going to fly in the air. And that is the hook. That is the thing that keeps you. We're all living in the world of TikTok and short attention span and really great content creators that are not like get paid lots of stuff. So if someone with a crappy camera who's 16 can make an amazing content, you as a designer who understands about communication can make great content about your designs. And that's essentially what I'm expecting in portfolios nowadays. What does that mean in practice? If you worked on something, I want to see a video of the thing. If you tell me about the problem that was before, show me that thing from before. And not just show me a screen and put like lines and say, hey, problem here, problem there. But we're working in flows. And I understand that Figma is a relatively dumb tool that you design screen by screen and it is not aware. And every error state, you need to mock it up individually. But we are moving very close to the world where that's not it. And at the end, what we're designing is flow. We're not designing the screens in Figma. We're designing the build that happens after the screens that we do in Figma. So lead with that. If there's any promotional or just make like a promotional video for the thing that you've done, even if the company didn't do that. You have VO3, you have all those tools, script making, etc. Just give me 30 seconds of explosions that relate to your product and what you've done. And I think having that as the anchor and the hook to start the portfolio review and then diving into details, again, like a case study presentation is not the same as portfolio. The idea is it's a teaser, right? It's like this, like 3 minutes. No one's going to look at your portfolio for 15 minutes. People will look at your portfolio for 30 seconds. Keep them for the 30 seconds with a video and then show in a nutshell that you understand how to break it down later and be like, okay, I'm willing to spend 1 hour with this person right now. Me and another person, I'm willing to spend 1 hour with this person because I see that they are able to understand the medium, to distill their work into the exciting part and the structure that is telling the right story in a very fast way. A portfolio is like a tweet and the case study is, I guess, like a whatever Medium article or whatever. I'm asking more. But in reality, like I expect every designer at Deel to sell their projects in the same manner at Deel. So you should do that type of thing already in the work. And then when you make your portfolio, it's just like picking it up and like slightly modifying it. But in reality, like I think think how much time you spend on a project, 3 months, 6 months of like building something, and then you come and make a portfolio in a week. The ratio of those things, like at the end, this is the thing that defines your future. So A, spend more time on your portfolio. B, spend more time on your portfolio through your regular day job. The way you present your work in your day job should be catered with the thought of, in a year from now, I need to present this thing to lots of other companies to get a job.
That's such a great advice. I love, like, anybody listening, that's 100% agree, because end of the day, you got to treat your portfolio as a product, right? You got to create the promos, you got to create the materials, marketing, and you got to say the story. You have a very similar thought process, because I talked to one person, a mentee of mine. I actually told him, like, exactly what you said earlier, use the AI and create something different from scratch. Just do something, because you don't know, because you might have a great opportunity to think outside everything. I actually would love to follow up a little bit into how do you look at the future, let's say moving next 2 years or 3 years into design. What do you think is gonna maybe the most important aspects for designers to think about, or a leader especially, right? Going into the leadership, or new leaders, what do they need to look out? Like, how would you shift at least? What are your thought of that?
I think generally being opinionated is really important. It comes in so many facets. So I had already, both at Deel, at Shopify as well, people that let AI do some stuff for them and just pass it along. And I'm like, I understand that you did something with AI, but AI can see you did it with AI, and B, what do you think about it? Or people that historically are very fast, sometimes make gazillions of options and show you, hey, you can do this and this. Okay, what do you think? So I think asking yourself, what do you think, why, and doing the reduction is the main thing for a designer, for a leader as well. At the end, those tools make it easier for you to get like baseline stuff. And the only way you can make a baseline into something amazing is by having an opinion.
Yeah.
And the only way you would be able to say, maybe now, like people get excited about AI and just the fact that it is done, especially in low maturity design organizations, and be like, okay, let's ship it. But in high maturity and like the more time will progress, people will be less accepting of the baseline, because now everything is going to look like that. And then how are you different?
Yeah.
Taste, I'm sure you've had many people in this podcast saying that taste became more important because the average is now accessible to all.
That's the straight truth, right? The taste is everybody's talking now, and differentiation, like you said. But I also believe, because there's everything looks similar, like it's going to be very hard for a lot of companies, like you said, low maturity, to really reinvent themselves in design, especially. Because I also believe, I don't know if you look at the same way, like a lot of people are doing things, especially in a lower maturity, but because there is no high standards, they're losing the importance, I would say, like the markers, right? And they're going into the experimentation and new AI stuff, but they do not see like how it's going to play around like in 1 year or 2 years, like you said.
Yep, 100%.
Thank you so much again. A lot of great insights from you, but I would like to do a little quick fire question round.
Good.
Cool. What was your one of the most underrated design skills that everyone should invest in? You mentioned a lot already, but I'd like to know which one you think.
I don't know if it's underrated, but actually I think it's underrated. Those people who can play a software like a piano, know all the shortcuts, etc., etc. I think was underrated, making yourself more productive over time. And I think with AI and prompting, etc., etc., you can always come and write a prompt from scratch, or you can have a bank of prompts that work. Like all those things, all those shortcuts that people historically don't tend to adopt.
Yeah.
Some do, but most will come to bite you in the ass with AI. So yes, make yourself more productive.
A book that you like to recommend or any resources for design you like to recommend?
For leaders, I would say Multipliers Revised. It's
Really good book.
written by Liz Wiseman.
Yeah.
I think why it's important right now is because, specifically because of layoff, this huge expectations to do more with less. And this book talks specifically about that and how can you leverage your team and encourage them to do exactly that. I would say for designers, Rick Rubin's book, The Creative Act, is a brilliant book. It is extremely easy to read, even for people who don't read
Mm-hmm.
books. It has very short, it's like a walkthrough book, so you can just jump to different episodes and just read about that. There is no, you don't need to start from the beginning and end at the end. And I think it's an amazing book for anyone who's creative at all, musician, designer, etc., etc. I think, yeah, it's an incredible tool. Magic Path. I recommend Magic Path as the AI tool. Oh, I lost the visual, but yes, Magic Path is a really interesting, cool, and fun new book. Okay.
That's a really good answer. What's your favorite AI tool right now or AI tools and how are you actually using them?
Magic Path, yes.
Yeah. And how are you using it? I'd like to know.
So I think it's more of a generative design
Mhm.
tool. It will manufacture like code, etc., but you are practically designing and coding at the same time. Unlike just design and then move it to code or write and move it to code. This one is the combination of them together. And I think that is really powerful because especially for designers, they don't necessarily are like going from design to code from let's say like a prepared design to code. It gets it close, but it never is the same. From zero to code, from prompt to code, it's nice, but it's really hard to get it like visually to work properly as well. And this one essentially addresses the main disadvantage of using AI right now, which is it's inaccurate. Here you can make it accurate through design.
Oh, wow.
So I think it's a really powerful tool. It's just like out of beta. There's
I need,
more to hear about that.
I need to try it out. Thank you for recommending.
Yeah, magicpath.ai.
Awesome. Thanks. A lot of great advice, great insights. Anywhere the listeners can find you.
So they can find me on superavi.com. I tend to write less there, but I do post my talks there. So if I do a talk and it's filmed, I will post there. And they can find me on X, superavi1, because I couldn't get superavi. Sad tears.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time and yeah, have a great evening.